Hey, soccer fans, this is Nick for Sons of a Pitch Soccer Central. Decision day is in the books. The MLS regular season has ended. Finally, we get to see the playoff picture, the matches that we wanted, maybe some of the matchups that we didn't want to see. But we're going to look back at all the scores and results from decision day and the prior week that got us to this point, and we're going to review the bracket. In the second half of the show, we're going to look at a few headlines from around the league, just a few things to keep in mind as we look ahead to the playoffs. And of course, we've got all of your comments and all of your questions in our live chat each and every week, like we do here at SOP Soccer Central. But also, like each and every week we do here, we got to kick things off with that sweet intro music. Hey, soccer fans. Once again, I am Nick, back as your host another week at Sons of a Pitch Soccer Central. We have a lot of soccer to talk about. We're going to try and squeeze it all in. I want to thank everyone who's already live in our YouTube chat. Red Bull Insider, Talk NYCFC, Connor Knows Soccer, and Angus McCorder. Thank you all for joining us. And for everyone listening on the podcast side of things, make sure you head over and find us on YouTube. Like the videos, subscribe to the channel, and feel free to join a paid membership of YouTube or leave a super chat or a super thanks. Throw a few dollars our way if you like what we're doing here. Or you know what? The easiest thing you can do to support the show is just let the ads run. Click an ad. Easy for you. Put some pennies in our pocket, and we do appreciate it. For everyone here on YouTube, who now includes Dan Geringer and a new Wiseman, great to have you jumping in. Also, go over and find us on your podcast platform. Set up those auto downloads. Get us a few extra little clicks and credit over there. And hey, who knows, the sponsorships may come rolling in. And if any potential sponsor is out there listening and you want to talk turkey, you want to talk about partnering up with this show and this channel, reach out to us on Twitter at SOP Soccer. DMs are open, and you can always email us at sonsofapitchsoccer@gmail.com. So with that housekeeping out of the way, and we're going to get right into last week's results. As you can see here on the screen, things really started off last week with Charlotte and Columbus playing, and Miami and Orlando playing. Some midweek games. Charlotte and Columbus were the rescheduled game from their earlier weather issues. And then Miami and Orlando were rescheduled after Orlando City's U.S. Open Cup run. So we're going to take a look at that and see how that affected the playoff, the build up to the playoffs. Now, Charlotte was hosting Columbus on that Wednesday, October 5th, and Charlotte's been a pretty good home team. We've seen up and downs from them. We've seen star striker Karol Swiderski go hot and cold. We've seen some other players step up. Daniel Rios recently had a 4-goal performance and has been pretty steady for them on the season. But in this instance, once again, the storyline is Columbus dropping points, giving up late goals, and drawing level. Now, the main result out of this game was that Charlotte was eliminated on that Wednesday night from the playoffs, and Columbus still had some work to do, but they were in a win and in kind of situation going into decision day. So their playoffs started early, but really it was Columbus with another kind of just dropped opportunity, another letdown at the end of the game, and a lot of questions starting to swirl around their defense. And we're going to get to some news coming out of Columbus later on in the show. Now, the second matchup, Miami versus Orlando City. Holy cow, Miami drops 4 on Orlando City before Orlando can find a bit of a consolation there to make it look like they actually played for a few minutes. Miami was firing on all cylinders, and they may even get Alejandro Pozuelo back for the playoffs, which is great for them. For me, this was excellent for Miami. It's what we wanted to see out of them. They are peaking at the right time at the end of the season here, making a push into the playoffs. Now, their decision day result notwithstanding, Miami did everything right here. They got off to an early start scoring goals. They got off to a fast start. They pressured Orlando. They forced Orlando into many mistakes, and Orlando could not find a rhythm. They could not get things going. I think Orlando just was not up for it. And we talked about Orlando being, I don't want to call them frauds, but not legit playoff contenders here because of how easy the beginning of their schedule was, because they had these interspersed U.S. Open Cup games that they were focusing on. And Orlando had some work to do left for them on decision day. And we're going to see those results now. Now I'm going to go ahead and try and throw my picture up here so you can see all my little facial expressions. But if there's any lighting issues, you let me know because things were flickering a minute ago. Great comment, though, here real quick from Red Bull Insider. Charlotte were very up and down this year. One good result, then a bad result. Yeah, that's kind of part of being an expansion team, right? Not just an expansion team, but also a team that fires their coach midway through the season and then has to rely on an interim coach. Now, Christian Lattanzio handled himself pretty well. I don't know if he is in the running for the actual managerial position or if he was just kind of the caretaker. We'll see what the organization does now that the season's over, but I do expect to hear a lot of news out of Charlotte as far as their coaching search goes, as well as maybe moving some players around and addressing some of the needs that they've identified in that first season. But as we've seen with expansion teams throughout MLS history, a good number of them, I think about a third of all expansion franchises have made the playoffs in their first season. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what some of my research last season reflected. But then like the number of teams going back-to-back playoffs appearances as an expansion team was like close to zero. So it's like expansion teams need to kind of build for sustained success, kind of build off of that first year. And I think that's the trend that we're seeing, right? Also, real quick, want to give a shout out, brother BKL Contreras, jumping on into this chat. Salutations to everyone in the SOP fam. Yeah, Red Bull says, I forgot Charlotte was an expansion team. Yeah, believe it or not, they were an expansion team. They had enough headlines to fill several seasons worth of commentary. But yep, just an expansion team this season. Now let's continue our review of Decision Day, looking at Sunday, October 9th. And as you all know with the scheduling, all these Eastern Conference Decision Day games were played at the same time in the early afternoon, and then all the Western Conference games played later in the afternoon, obviously, so there's nobody reporting back and forth and fixing matches or playing for draws if they need wins, whatever the case may be, right? Things got kicked off with Atlanta hosting New York City. Now, Atlanta, I think they had already been eliminated at this point, but for New York City, it was playoff seeding was at stake. They had already locked up a top 4 spot, and either they were going to finish 3rd or 4th. And with this result, New York City is the number 3 team in the Eastern Conference. They got off to a 2-0 start. They got off to a quick start, but there are some headlines and injuries we're going to talk about in the second half of the show when we kind of preview some of the playoff matchups. So great result for New York City. Not the best look for Atlanta to finish off a season. Atlanta had a very, very tough season this year with all the injuries piling up, with the personnel issues, especially surrounding Joseph Martinez and the coaching staff and his antics. But we saw Thiago Almada step up and develop into a good player. We saw Andrew Gutman step up that second half of the season, not only playing excellent defense, but finding the back of the net on a number of occasions. And he may have found the goal in this one. I don't remember it offhand. But we have seen a lot of promise from this Atlanta team, and but for the injuries, they would probably be in the playoffs, if not a top 5 team in the conference, right? So next, we got a lot of comments about this Atlanta game here. A new Weissman is writing Boca out. Boca out. Oh my goodness. And I saw some tweets, I think it was probably yours, where the fans in the stadium, some of the most loyal and passionate fans around MLS were chanting Boca out. And with, I think it was Darren Eales who is now out. His Boca Negra's job is probably in question, to be polite. But yeah, Atlanta has to do a lot of soul searching this season. That's for sure. But Talk NYCFC on the flip side says Atlanta were so bad we should have scored more than 2 goals, honestly. Well, you get the win, you get the 3 points, you lock up your seeding for the playoffs. That was kind of the main goal to get out of that game. But yeah, you want to go in with good form. You don't want to go in with any regrets or missed opportunities weighing on people's minds. And you especially don't want to go into any sort of injuries. And we'll talk about that in the second half of the show. Now, looking at the next matchup, my hometown team, Chicago Fire, hosting the New England Revolution. Not the prettiest game, especially after both teams being eliminated from playoff contention at this point. I was hoping Chicago could get a win to end the season at home, maybe jump up to that 10th place spot. That's the best they could have done coming into the game. And honestly, given the Fire haven't made the playoffs now in 4 straight seasons, finishing 10th and just avoiding a wooden spoon would have been a small, tiny, itty-bitty moral victory. But alas, they give up an 89th minute goal to New England after just some poor play, a lot of giveaways, sloppiness in the middle of the pitch. But then here's your bright spot for the future, right? The youth movement in Chicago. We've talked about John Duran and Brian Gutierrez, but Alex Moniz gets his first ever MLS goal. And if you want a feel-good story, go out and find the tweet. His father put out a tweet that they were sitting in almost the same seats when he took Alex to his first ever Chicago Fire game, and now he's sitting in those seats watching his son score a goal for the Chicago Fire, and his reaction video is out on Twitter as well. So a really nice family affair there. We're going to hear more from one of the show's sponsors and good friends and longtime Fire follower, John Donovan, during the halftime break. So if you want to hear more about the Chicago Fire and their matchup against New England, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Next game, DC United falls 5-2 against Cincinnati. Good for Cincy running up the score on DC. They definitely needed to get some positive momentum going into the playoffs. And DC just needed this season to end as quickly as possible. The way things had gone, a wooden spoon for DC, but couple of bright spots. You get Wayne Rooney back in as your manager, give him time to work his magic with these players and some of the youngsters that they're promoting. And you got Christian Benteke, who now has a few MLS games under his belt as a striker for DC and can maybe bring some stability to the offense. Man, it'd be nice to see a dual kind of striker role with him and Taxi Fountas next season. That would be phenomenal to see. Our next matchup, Miami was hosting CF Montreal, and Miami wanted to take care of business. They would have really helped them out in the playoff standings and just to feel confident that they were in. But they give up, I think, 3 first-half goals to CF Montreal. And if there's a Twitter account out there called When Playing Out of the Back Goes Wrong, this Miami game is the poster child for when playing out of the back goes wrong. You had Miami defender play it back to goalkeeper, pushes it out, and muffs the pass to an onrushing Montreal player. Jordi Mihailovic gets the deflection for the easiest goal of his career. If you like goalie howlers and defensive howlers, then go find that first one. But that really set the tones. Miami never really got their heads back into the game after that. Montreal went out to the 3-0 lead, and that's all she wrote. Fortunately for Miami, they do make the playoffs. Montreal, though, unfortunately for them, Philadelphia goes on to win, so Montreal has to settle for second in the East at this point. New York with a big 2-0 win over Charlotte, so the Red Bulls lock up their top 4 playoff spot, and they go into the playoffs with a little bit of momentum. I'm going to talk about the Red Bulls a little more when we look at the bracket, because I really, as a fan, I'm excited about their matchups. Now, I've purposely been holding off looking at some of the comments in the chat until we got to this 2-1 Orlando victory over Columbus, because as a result of this game, a lot of things happened, not just Columbus being eliminated here. So I want to get into some of these comments. We have Connor Knows Soccer, who, if you don't follow him on Twitter and YouTube, please go do so. He does a lot of live watch-alongs, reactions. Big Columbus Crew fan. Check him out. And he says Orlando game was fixed. They got all of the calls and got away with a lot of stuff. But what do I know? I'm just a YouTuber. Well, the eye test, Connor. Every fan out there's got the eye test, right? So I'll give you that. But here's the thing. Like, you can't blame the season on one referee's game when Columbus has dropped more points and results after the 75th minute than any other team in the league, especially second half of the season. So that is going to be extremely difficult for any team to recover from. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some headlines out of Columbus in the second half of our show as well. But that one helped Columbus get eliminated, bring Orlando City into the game, into the playoffs, and we're going to look at this the breakdown a little bit later. Talk NYCFC says turf needs to be abolished. More people went down on that turf field than people did in World War II. Wow, that's a powerful take there. But he says, honestly, Yankee Stadium never has had serious injury. I don't know what anyone says. Turf is a disgrace to the sport. I got to agree with you. Maybe not to the level of like World War II casualties right now, but I will agree with you that so many injuries occur because of turf. We saw it with Atlanta. We see it even when you get players who have a history of knee injuries, or you get some kind of senior players coming into teams. None more famous than Zlatan, right? When he came to the Galaxy, they didn't play him at Seattle because of the turf field. They wanted to preserve his knees and his legs, right? So you know that turf affects the player's health, the player's training. I don't know if the solution is just to go all grass. I'd love to see it, but the realities of maintaining that, especially when you still have a handful of teams playing in stadiums with other tenants like NYCFC, like Chicago Fire, like the I'm trying to think who else, if the Revolution or Atlanta United are some that come to mind immediately. I don't know if going grass is the solution, but you need to find a better playing surface. I mean, some of the fields that I've seen, it looks like they just painted lines on green concrete, and that's what they're running out on. Maybe it is some of the better turf with some of the rubber pellets and more of the advanced spring cushioning, drainage systems and whatever. But you're right, it's got to get better if we're going to start avoiding injuries. And the problem is you have young guys who are training on this from 12, 13, 14 years old. And then by the time they get to the pros, those little, I don't know if you want to call them micro tears or micro fractures. I'm no doctor. I'm just spitting out some words I heard at some point. But like those little things build up. And then when you're playing at the senior level and at that competition, the injuries come out. So to me, it's not just you play on it for game day, but it's you've been playing on it for 5, 10, 15 years, and finally something just gives. Good little rant there, I think, right, guys? Brother BKL says about NYC, it was impressive, but a bad idea between the playoffs. Tavon Gray and Tyus Magno hurt, and we're going to take a look at that in the second half. And, here's a new Wiseman. We'll take care of Gaga up the Chells. Yes. Gaga Slonina has become the favorite soccer player in my household. I took my kids to their first ever soccer game, a Chicago Fire game this summer, a 1-0 victory over the aforementioned DC United. But yeah, we got to see Gaga Slonina play live, and they just love him. I don't know if it's the name. I don't know if it's because as the goalie, he gets to wear the coolest jerseys and uniforms out there. Maybe they were drawn to that. Or the fact that he lives, he grew up not too far from where we live right now in the suburbs. But yeah, great to see him go over to Chelsea. Hopefully he's not part of that loan army. Unless he gets loaned back to the Chicago Fire for another season. We did see Chris Brady step in for this game, handled himself really well. I don't think there was much he could have done on that New York City goal. The whole defense just kind of retreated into the box, allowing, I forget the Revs player who took that shot, just teed one up from like 19, 20 yards out because nobody stepped up. So I'm high on Brady and wishing Gaga all the best overseas. All right, let's keep rolling. We got tons and tons of comments in here in the chat, and thank you guys for joining us. Angus McCorder says, personally, I think that Columbus actually did better than a lot of people thought. They had a pretty good start to the season, and I thought that bringing in Cucho Hernandez was going to elevate them to that top tier. You had a good core of players, and you've got a game changer in Zelarayan. I think that they had to plug a few holes on defense. I know personally I wouldn't like to have seen Pedro Santos playing as much defense and wingback as he did, but so you gotta kind of figure that out better, Caleb Porter, and use your players better, and maybe develop and try some younger players coming up, maybe from an academy squad if they're going to be a more traditional defensive team. But that was the problem, right? They couldn't close out games. So there's a lot of issues there. I agree they probably were better and they probably are deserving of a playoff spot, but I can't say that. I can't say they're deserving when they didn't make it, right? We've got the whole season done. So anyway, you're right. They should have done better. They probably looked a lot better, but I think the star power on offense distracted people from their biggest weakness, and that was the defense. Connor No Soccer says, chiming in here on our turf conversation, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think turf is banned in UEFA competitions. You know, now that I read that out loud, Connor, you might be right. I'm gonna have to look that up after the show, or if anyone in the comments wants to go Google that real quick, I would definitely appreciate it. But that would be great precedent for other leagues and organizations around the world to change that up. A new Wiseman even says Mercedes-Benz Stadium down in Atlanta is going to have grass in 2026. That's awesome. Oh, hey, we got Junior jumping in on the chat. Can't believe Austin didn't win yesterday. The refs rigged the game. Austin had 2 disallowed goals that should have stood. Yeah, what can we say? Austin, I think Junior had a parlay going with that Austin result. So, Junior, I'm glad you're jumping in, man. I know you've had some really good picks throughout the season, and this is a great time for me to tell everyone we're going to do a full picks and predictions playoff style Wednesday night. It will not be a live video; it will be recorded. So make sure you turn on your notifications on the YouTube channel so you can know when that video gets released. And here we go. Talk NYCFC says grass is mandatory by FIFA for the World Cup. And we've got a lot of other people jumping in as well, kind of agreeing with what Connor thinks there, that in the major competitions, yep, Angus McCorder even confirms it, artificial turf is banned in UEFA. Now let's try to get that here in MLS. We were trendsetters with VAR, for better or worse, whatever your opinion on VAR is. But let's jump on this trend as far as turf goes. All right, we got some more results to get into, guys. Let's keep it rolling. You all continue that talk in the chat. I love to see you guys hanging out and doing that. So keep it going, and I will finish off our decision day scores. The last Eastern Conference game, Philadelphia with a 4-0 whooping of Toronto to end the season. Mercifully for TFC, things you thought were going to turn around. There was a moment when you had Insigne, Bernardeschi coming in, as well as some other summer signings for TFC, but their defense could not get it figured out. It looked like it was a lot bigger project than maybe management and Bob Bradley thought it would be, and they've got a lot to figure out. They've got some excellent pieces moving forward. My gut tells me they're going to be a playoff team next year, because give Bob Bradley a year with the team and he's going to do great things, especially when you have offensive talent. He's going to figure out how to lock it down on defense. But anyway, story is Philadelphia, 4 goals to continue one of the most historic goal scoring, goal differential, goals allowed seasons in MLS history. I think for those 3 categories, this is a top 5 season that the Union are having here in 2022. I think they're top 5, if not the top 3 in goals scored, goal differential, and goals allowed. Now, moving into the Western Conference, we got a 1-1 Austin draw, as Junior was so vociferous about in the chat, that the referees had a major influence on this game. You hate to see that. You never want refs deciding games, but at the same time, you as players got to know you can't put refs in positions to affect the game. That's just banter. As it ends, Austin is still the second best team in the Western Conference. They've got that second seed against the 7 seed that we will reveal in a few minutes. And 1-1 draw to Colorado. Colorado, very disappointing after coming off a really good season last year where they won the Western Conference. You can say they sold a lot of players, and that was the issue. But if you're going to say that you have one of the best coaches in the league and you love Robin Fraser and he's this tactical mastermind and this brilliant cultural guy, you can't then turn around and say, well, we sold a bunch of players and that's why we didn't make the playoffs. So you can't have your cake and eat it to Colorado Rapids fans. But for your sake, I hope they bring in some players. I hope ownership recognizes that with that little extra talent boost that they'll be able to get back into the playoffs. Dallas ends the season with a 2-1 victory over Kansas City. Kansas City had come in hot despite being eliminated from the playoffs, but Dallas regains their form. I can't recall if Ferreira scored in that one, but good little momentum booster for Dallas. They're going to need it because they're going to have to go through Austin and LAFC at some point if they want to get to MLS Cup. Now, Houston hosted the LA Galaxy, and the talk on everyone lips was that Houston, last season as a poor team upsets LA on decision day to knock them out of the playoffs. Well, no such history repeating. The Galaxy get 3 goals to Houston's 1 and pick up a little momentum going into the playoffs. Next, on the other side of LA, the LAFC falls 1-0 to Nashville, and LAFC still have the top spot. I didn't get a chance to watch a lot of this game, guys. So what did you think about this game? Were LAFC tweaking lineups and things, or did they just kind of go for it and fall flat on their face, or did Nashville just come out and have a great day and win it 1-0, right? So let's take a look at a few comments here before we jump into the second half of those Western Conference results. Connor says TFC needs improvement in a lot of spots. You're absolutely right, Connor. I think a lot of people picked on the goalkeeping this year as well, that was a major issue, and that they really hadn't decided on who's going to be their number one for the season, and who, given results, they kind of move some guys around, and that does not help anchor a back line, and it does not give the goalie confidence when he's playing behind a shaky back line. So the defense, I think, needs to be the focus, but you're absolutely right. They do need to have some more attacking pieces. You can't just rely on Bernardeschi and Insigne and Crescito as well. But hey, go find our friend Jay Jardim on Twitter. He's got a lot of TFC takes, and I know Mike's going to be putting a lot of TFC offseason content out. Brother BKL says, I think Bob Bradley should be out. They need to rebuild for defense and a perfect goalkeeper. Oh, well, there you go. I think so. You and I agree as far as on the field, but I think, I know they're going to give Bob more time. I think Bob's earned more time. And as much as I've criticized him in the past, give the guy a full offseason and some time to work with the new additions, and I think they'll be all right. But Connor agrees with Brother BKL. Starting with the head coach and front office, they need a lot of improvement this year. And Red Bull Insider is even calling it. Bob Bradley will be out of his job by next July. Ouch, what a way for one of the, I think we can safely say he's one of the greatest American coaches in history. And I don't mean USMNT, I just mean as an American. But wow, he, catching a lot of flack here in our chat tonight. Junior says the refs that officiate Austin FC versus Colorado should be fined or banned. Atrocious in the second half. Connor No Soccer says, welcome to MLS. Hey, we've got eSuper1 jumping in on the chat. eSuper, appreciate you finding us and following us. Keep the conversation going. He says LAFC are chokers. Well, they didn't choke when it came to the Supporter Shield, but you're right. They do have a history of some poor playoff performances. We'll see what they do in the playoffs this year. They got that bye week to kind of get their heads right. As Talk NYCFC says, Willis played out of his skin. And, I was just listening to the Extra Time podcast, the MLS podcast. And yeah, they were saying the same thing, that Joe Willis may have been the best player on the weekend, right? eSuper continues and says, Supporter Shield is all LAFC can win. It's not a bad thing, right? You're the best regular season team. Most leagues would crown you with that, but hey, that's not MLS, right? Angus McCorder chimes in, LAFC has a pattern of not going all the way when they're in the spotlight, which is crazy for Hollywood team, right? You want the spotlight. Anyway, we got a few more results before we take our halftime break. The final 3 games affected the final 3 playoff spots in the Western Conference, or the final 2 that were up for grabs, right? Minnesota hosts Vancouver and wins 2-0, knocking Vancouver out of the playoffs. And RSL at home against the Portland Timbers, who I thought were going to take it or at least come up with a draw. Salt Lake beats them 3-1. And nobody wants to play Salt Lake in the playoffs, right? They've got a history. Speaking of those LAFC flops we've seen, Salt Lake's had their hand in at least one of those. So Salt Lake gets into the playoffs with a 3-1 victory over Portland. And just to round out the season, Seattle and San Jose play to a 2-2 draw. A little bit of trivia here for you. With Vancouver, Portland, and Seattle eliminated, this is the first time since we've had all 3 teams in the league that Cascadia, Vancouver, Portland, Seattle, the Pacific Northwest, has not been represented in the playoffs. So a little bit of trivia for you, not to get down on any Sounders, Timbers, or Whitecaps fans, but that is what we all have to say. That's the big storyline coming out of the Pacific Northwest. So we are going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and look at the playoff bracket, and then look at a few headlines as well that can affect your playoff picks and matchups and things like that. On the podcast side, you're going to hear from John Donovan about all things Chicago Fire. On the YouTube side, we're going to take like a quick 30-second break just to see a graphic from our sponsors here and give a great shout out to Skira Icelandic Spring Water. We'll be back right after this. All right, everyone. Thank you for that halftime break, allowing me to catch my breath, allowing John Donovan to fill us in on all things Chicago Fire. John, I want to thank you for contributing to the show throughout the entire season. It's not easy when you talk about the Chicago Fire and the results that they've had and the headlines they've made, but I appreciate you letting us know what's going on each and every week with the Chicago Fire, and we look forward to continuing our conversations in the offseason, seeing what the Fire do. We actually got tons of great comments going on in the chat here about Montreal, about the supporter shields, only good for CONCACAF Champions League. I love this comment from Connor. Eric Williamson to Columbus Crew rumors. He's a free agent in the offseason. That would be something to have Zelarayan and Williamson running that midfield. I wonder if they play similar roles, or if having Williamson would allow Zelarayan to get further up the field and be more of a goal-scoring threat than just a free kick guy and an assist man, but that would be phenomenal. All right, let's get into the playoff bracket here up on the screen. Looking at the Western Conference, we always talk about the Eastern Conference first because of scheduling, but let's look at the Western Conference here. We have LAFC as the 1 seed. They get the bye. Real quick, so you guys know, this is the last time that we're going to have the first round bye. Next season, I think they're going to 8 teams out of each conference, especially with a couple expansion teams that have come in. We'll have, I think, 29 teams if my quick counting and math in my head serve me correct. We'll have 29 teams next season with St. Louis coming in. And so that'll be 8-8, and there'll be no more first round bye. So I think that's the change for next season. But as it stands, LAFC gets the first round bye. They get a week to get their head straight. On October 15th, we have the 4-5 matchup of LA Galaxy versus Nashville. And honestly, guys, I'm excited about every single one of these matchups because we've got the cream of the crop in MLS here that are facing off head to head. This is what these teams play for, and these one-off games here, single elimination, knockout round playoffs, are going to bring the best out of these teams. Now, maybe the first 10, 15 minutes, things are a little cagey. No one wants to commit. No one wants to make that early mistake that costs them a chance at a trophy. But these close games in the second half, I think things can really open up. When you see a goal in the 55th, 60th minute, it's going to be that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping one of these teams gets either a goal in like the 44th minute or like the 59th minute, and then things just open up. And I'd love to see that, especially with a couple teams that can score goals like the Galaxy and Nashville SC. So that's who we've got in the 4-5 matchup. I guess my gut is going to tell me Nashville. They've got the Golden Boot winner. They've got I think probably a better defense than LA, but we'll see what happens. And I'll mull it over and put my official picks on the line come the next video. On October 17th, we have Dallas, the 3 seed, hosting 6 seed Minnesota United. I think this is going to be a good game. I feel like there's a budding rivalry between Minnesota and Dallas. Maybe I just want there to be, especially with Dallas being able to kind of romp over Houston a little and still get smacked down by Austin a little, at least in the standings. It's good to see them match up against Minnesota, a Minnesota team who had that great run in the second half of the season and then kind of limped into the playoffs a bit, but they get the win on decision day. And we will see if Reynoso can match up his offense with Ferreira, as well as the rest of that Dallas team. We'll see how that goes. The final matchup on opening weekend the opening round for the West, number 2, Austin hosts number 7, RSL. The RSL is playing with house money as far as I'm concerned. The way that roster is currently built, the turmoil they've had, we've been talking about all season. But when you come off a 3-1 win to knock Portland out of the playoffs and secure your spot, I'm sure those players think that they're going to win every game from here on out. So that is going to be just one thrilling matchup to watch, with some of the best offensive talent in the league going against some of the most grit in the league in RSL. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then as you get into the conference semis, you've got LAFC hosting the winner of Galaxy and Nashville. Man, give me either one of those, right? Now let's jump on over or slide and scroll on over to the Eastern Conference. Philadelphia with that 1 seed and a bye, and then Red Bull, 4th seed, hosting Cincinnati, the 5th seed. I think that's going to be a really fun game because everyone knows the Red Bull style of soccer, and we know Cincinnati is based on quick attacking and Lucho Acosta linking things up, hitting Brandon Vasquez. Brenner's become an absolute gem of a player the second half of the season for FC Cincinnati. So we'll see what gives. This could be like a 3-4 goal for Cincinnati type of game, and they beat Red Bull 4-1. Or this could be just kind of a crushing, counter-attacking, pressing game, and Red Bull pulls out like a 2-1 victory or something like that. So I always love watching Red Bull play high-stakes games, and this is going to be no different for me. Personally, I kind of want to see Red Bull advance just so they can match up against Philadelphia again and watch those two teams go at it, but I would still be just as entertained with Philadelphia-Cincinnati. Now, looking at the bottom half of the bracket and the Eastern Conference, 3rd seed NYCFC hosts 6th seed Inter Miami. Going to be another fun one, guys, because Miami is traveling to Yankee Stadium for this one. I'm assuming it's in Yankee Stadium, unless there's some postseason baseball going on. But we've got NYCFC, who, let's take a look over here at these headlines, and I'm putting them up on the screen. And some of you all already commented about NYC's rash of injuries in this final game, right? The biggest one here, Talles Magno hurt his shoulder after falling down in the box. And I'm going to scroll down here, and you're going to see right here, Tavon Gray, Alfredo Morales, and Talles Magno all go down with injuries in this game. And I'm going to highlight some comments from Nick Cushing. It's a foot injury for Tavon, it's a shoulder injury for Talles, and it's a calf injury for Alfredo. So they're going to do everything they can to get these guys prepped and ready for that match. But these injuries could affect not only the starting talent, but maybe some of the depth. We'll see how NYCFC gets on with or without these players, or with them in just limited minutes, right? Meanwhile, you've got the Gonzalo Higuain farewell tour. They had a really nice retirement ceremony for him ahead of Miami's last match against Montreal, despite the terrible result against Montreal. We'll see if he goes out with a bang, if he wants to knock a few in and maybe take down the defending MLS Cup champs and help cement his legacy in Inter Miami history. And the final Eastern Conference matchup, number 2 Montreal hosting number 7 Orlando. I don't know, right? I'm shocked Orlando got into the playoffs. I hope, honestly, I really hope Orlando City doesn't win this game. I want Montreal, who has been one of the best teams throughout the entire run of the league, to advance and match up and have some better games. I don't think Orlando is going to be playing very well. I haven't liked watching them. Their offense has always been lacking. I'm kind of bummed about the 7th spot in the Eastern Conference, regardless of which team it was going to be. Orlando, Columbus, Charlotte. I kind of bummed about it because I don't think any team was really, truly deserving of it. But Orlando had the points, they had the record, and they're matching up against Montreal. So that's, again, though, just the rantings of a YouTube soccer show host. Now let's take a look at some of your comments before we take a look at a couple of the headlines here. Dan Geringer says LAFC versus Philly. And Dan, I've said that in shows past that I think that would be the best MLS Cup from like a watchability standpoint, from a neutral standpoint. 2 best teams throughout the entire course of the season, historic seasons for both. I would love to see them match up. Talk NYCFC says, I think NYCFC will advance due to Miami's lack of experience in high-pressure games. That may be true, but you've got Gonzalo Higuain. I mean, the guy's won, I think, 17 trophies, I heard in a recent podcast. So he might be able to will them through, and then maybe there's that a little sense of they don't know any better kind of a thing. But you're right, experience is going to be at a disadvantage for Miami. Let's see what we got from E Super says, oh man, so NYC are done. Yeah, he does not have a lot of confidence in NYCFC with those injuries and going up against Gonzalo Higuain. There we go. Angus McCorder chimes in. Last time I checked, all New York games are in the first round in Red Bull Stadium. Oh, okay. So we'll have to look at that and confirm it. But yeah, Red Bull Insider, you would know. He confirms it as well. NYCFC versus Miami at Red Bull Arena. So thank you guys for letting me know that. Let me just say it's been a long weekend. I haven't had a chance to get a lot of my notes prepped, right? But thank you guys for letting us know that. Hey, real quick, guys, shout out here to Columbus Sports Insider. Connor knows soccer. Connor knows things. So if you want to also follow some other Columbus and Ohio sports stuff, check that channel out. Talk NYCFC says he's going to the game. Fantastic, man. Send us some pictures. Would love to see that stadium rocking for a playoff game, even if it is for NYCFC. Connor No Soccer also says Cincy over Red Bull is trash at home. All right, there you go. Red Bull is trash at home. Yeah, they haven't had a good home record, but you know what? Coming into the playoff game, different beast. And Talk NYCFC even agrees with Connor. I think Cincy will make this a blowout. Interesting. Brother BKL says Nashville versus Montreal in MLS Cup is his opinion. That is interesting to say the least, because I have always said Montreal does not look like a trophy-winning team, but yet here they are, and they've got a good pathway through what I think is a weak Orlando and maybe a banged-up New York City and an inexperienced Miami team. That could be a good path for Montreal to get to the finals. Also, Talk NYCFC says Citi Field, where the Mets play, could host. Nick, keep an eye on that. Oh, fantastic. And guys, tweet at us, hit us up online, let us know what's going on. And we can continue the conversation there when we're not live streaming. Now let's take a look at some of the headlines here. First off, Hani Mukhtar wins the 2022 Golden Boot. And as the headline here says, the first German-born player and first Nashville SC player to claim the scoring title. Let's take a look quick at the results. Hani Mukhtar with 23 goals on the season, as well as adding 11 helpers. Sebastian Driussi comes up one short. He's got 22 goals, and so does Daniel Gazdag of Philly. What is cool from an American soccer perspective, you've got 3 Americans in the top 10. Jesus Ferreira bags 18 goals. Brandon Vasquez with 18 goals, and Jeremy Ebobisse with 7. Some of your other goal scorers in the Golden Boot race. Again, Mukhtar, Driussi, Gazdag, 1, 2, 3. Ferreira, 4. Chicharito with 18 in 5th. And then you've got Brenner, who came on strong the second half of the season, sitting in 6th place. Vasquez, Ebobisse. Chicho Arango for LAFC rounds out the top 10. And Gonzalo Higuain even sneaks in there at 11, I believe, or tied for 10th with Arango on those 16 goals. So excellent. If you want to look at assists, let's see if the website will load quickly for me so we can kind of see who's been the guy pulling the strings here if you want to use assists to measure it. And of course, the MLSsoccer.com website is going to crap out on me right now. So I will let you guys go onto the MLSsoccer.com website and figure that out. So we've got a few other headlines that I wanted to share. First off with Chicago Fire, again, being my hometown team here. And Chicago's been really criticized this season for having underperforming designated players with Xherdan Shaqiri, Jairo Torres, and Gaston Jimenez. The Chicago Fire have restructured Jimenez's contract, so he gets an extension through 2025. So he gets 3 more seasons, but it's restructured down from a designated player contract to probably a TAM level type deal. What kills me is that he's still on the roster at all. I think Chicago, with Joe Mansueto, the new owner's money and ambition should either just pay him, release him, transfer him to Lugano. But I guess they feel like he can still fill a role for this team moving forward and still free up a DP spot. Maybe they want to do right by Gaston. But what's funny, a couple weeks back, I was going over some old show notes just because that's what I do sometimes. And like 2 years ago, the Chicago Fire actually had offers to sell him back to, I want to say, an Argentine or Brazilian side, and they declined those offers and gave him a TP deal. Yeah, if only they had a time machine, right, guys? Now, looking at some other Eastern Conference news, Columbus Crew part ways with head coach Caleb Porter. This was the biggest non-soccer or non-like result headline coming out of decision day. Caleb Porter had 4 seasons with the Columbus Crew. He had that 2019 season taken over when Greg Berhalter became head coach of the U.S. men's national team. And I think it was a respectable season. I think they made the playoffs that year. And then, of course, 2020, winning MLS Cup, guiding them through the COVID season, winning the Cup, getting that star on their shield. But then the last 2 years has failed to make the playoffs. Left some bad taste in people's mouths by what he said about Gyasi Zardes when they traded Zardes and got rid of him. But he even says it in one of his quotes, like, this is a results-driven business and I wasn't getting the job done. So, finally now you're going to take some of the blame. Now that you're fired, you can take the high road and say, it was on me, not bashing your players anymore. But here is what it really is, guys. He's essentially a 500 coach for Columbus. 45 wins, 43 losses, and 37 draws in the regular season, not counting any other sort of tournaments or postseason play. So he's a 500 coach for Columbus. So you win that MLS Cup season, I imagine you're going to have a pretty good record. I kind of hate doing this because it minimizes what he actually did, but you take out that MLS Cup season, he was a bad coach with Columbus. But you still got to give credit where credit's due that he won it. But when you have Cucho, when you have Zillarian, when you have these kind of players, when you have like solid pieces in Sebastian Berhalter and Etienne and other guys like that, when Eloy Room, who's no world beater in goal, but is a solid MLS goalkeeper, and you can only accrue a 500 record, you're not going to last long. The final headline I wanted to touch on, again, on the Eastern Conference, and then we'll get to some of your comments. Orlando City defender Robin Janssen is out for the playoffs with foot surgery. This came out on Saturday before they knew that they had clinched a playoff spot. But nevertheless, Robin Janssen is out, as the article discusses. Orlando's expected to have Rodrigo Schlegel and Antonio Carlos as their starting center backs. Guys who are solid, right? But not going to elevate. Anytime you got to replace a starter for the playoffs, you're not going to be at the level that you want to be. And they even say he's been with the club since 2019 and has had 98 starts. So that is a workhorse for a club they're going to have a hard time replacing for the playoffs. So with that, let's take a look at some of everyone else's comments here, right? Hani Mukhtar Edits jumps into the comments. How about Hani? That's my boy, Hani. He says, yes, Hani did it all season for you guys for the gold there in Nashville. Great to see him win that Golden Boot. That probably locks up him as the MVP as well. But we'll wait till the official announcement for that, right? We have Dan Geringer saying Holland has already beat them. LOL. Erling Haaland is playing fantastic. In fact, I love some of the jokes that have been coming on Twitter as far as like World Cup, since Norway isn't on there. They're like, every team can get one emergency Haaland like 15-minute, 30-minute substitution appearance, and that would be great for the World Cup. God, if they could make that happen. Then Qatar is the place to do that, since every stadium is within, like a couple hour drive. They could pull it off if they really wanted to. But anyway, that's not going to happen, but it's fun to think about Haaland just jumping in on some random teams, right? Also, Angus McCorder says, I see Miami is trying to draw Ronaldo. Well, that's interesting. I mean, we've had the Messi rumors. Now we've got the Ronaldo rumors. There have been rumors for everybody linked to Miami. I'll believe it when ink is put on paper and the contract is announced by the league. That's when I'll believe it. I don't know if I want to see Ronaldo. Excuse me. I don't know if I want to see him in this league. I've never been a fan of his. I don't know. That's just me. It has nothing to do with soccer or talent or personality. It's just, I don't know. There's something about the guy. Maybe it's the fact that he plays for Manchester United. Maybe that's it. Not a huge Man U fan. But, if he comes to the league, great. I hope he can continue to elevate the play of every single player around them. If it's going to be a benefit to the league, phenomenal. If he's just coming here to make a paycheck for a season or two, set up some restaurants and nightclubs in Miami, then I don't want him here. Like, we have moved beyond that as a league and as a soccer culture in the United States. And we need guys who are going to come and dedicate themselves to the league. If he does that, I'll welcome him with open arms. A new Wiseman says he said that he'll bet his house that Columbus will make the playoffs. Oh, you got to be referring to Caleb Porter. So he's going to have to sell his house now. He's out of a job in Columbus. So I guess that one. So I guess that is going to come true. He may actually have to sell his house. Connor says Miami is retirement FC. Ouch for Miami, especially when they actually do have some decent young players. Like they've got Carranza, they've got Duke. I'm trying to remember who's in goal for them, if that's kind of an up and coming player, but they've got a lot of got a lot of young pieces as well. But you're right, it was all about Higuain. It was all about trying to get the big transfers. It was about Blaise Matuidi. It was about Rodolfo Pizarro, and as we know, with the roster manipulations that they were doing, none of those guys are on the roster anymore. So that was tough. Angus, I appreciate your sentiments with Ronaldo along matching up with mine, right? Yes, hashtag call up Duke. Connor, phenomenal there. All right, guys, we are coming up on an hour here, and honestly, I was a little under the weather. I don't know if you can hear it in my stuffed up nose a little bit. I didn't think I could actually get a full hour in, but here we go. We did it. MLS and the chat just got me juiced up, and the energy got me through. So thank you all who has been in our chat for keeping things going. For Connor, Brother BKL, Angus McCorder, Dan Geringer, Super jumping in, Talk NYCFC, Red Bull Insider, for John Donovan for doing our Chicago Fire update, for Junior jumping in, letting us know never bet on Austin again. The refs are out to get them. So thank you to everyone who was a part of the conversation tonight. If you want to continue the conversation, find us on Twitter at SOP Soccer. Email us, sonsofapitchsoccer@gmail.com. If you really enjoyed it, if you like what we do and you want to support us financially, send a super chat or super thanks, even if it's 99 cents, even if it's $1. We had a few come in from Canada last week, so we got those Canadian dollar donations rolling in. If you want to support us, we'd appreciate that very much. If you want to take it to the next level and sponsor the show, then you can reach out to us again at SOP Soccer or sonsofapitchsoccer@gmail.com. But honestly, the best thing y'all can do to support the show, and the easiest thing you can do, share the link, like, subscribe, tell people about us, continue to grow the sport in America through conversation. That's been our goal since we started this on day one, 5+ years ago, in Mike's RV and in my garage. So that's the easiest thing. Like, subscribe, share the link, click an ad, throw a few pennies our way. We appreciate it very much. But for all of you who are out there, enjoy the matchups. We've got our picks and predictions video coming out late Wednesday night, and I hope that everyone here enjoys it. Quick programming announcement. I will not be here next week. I will be on vacation, enjoying my 10-year anniversary with my wife. So I will leave it to Mike. He is going to hopefully be back or set up a live chat for everybody next week and after some of the first round of games, so we can continue discussing it. So again, keep those notifications on, because with the way the schedule is working out, we may have to change some of our chats and recaps here. But with that being said, everyone, I appreciate y'all being here, and I want to thank each and every one of you again. Enjoy the rest of your week and all the soccer to come.